Good afternoon all. So we have Stuart Ryder, who's the Global Head of Mobile for Ipsos Interactive. We've got Josh Samuel here in the middle, who's the Global Head of Innovation for Millward Brown. And we've also got Torsten Müller-Klockmann, who's the Global Head of Digital Market Intelligence for GfK. So 3 global heads. The first question I want to start the session off is, what do you think are the biggest new areas emerging in market research and the challenges around these?
Does this work? It does.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are 3 big themes that have been discussed quite a lot at this conference that I think are, kind of summarise the big emerging things in our industry. Before this session, Stuart said to me that the first person to mention big data would have to buy the beers, so that's going to be me, because that is theme number 1, and it's about getting insight from these emerging big data sources. I think the second theme is automation, and the third theme is about better targeting and tailoring our survey research. So to say a little bit more about those. On the big data side, I think it's about the industry will increasingly move away from big data just being the preserve of the data scientist and the bespoke data scientist-led analytics to extract insight from these new non-survey data sources. And I think it will and needs to become a routine part of what we're all doing as market researchers to get insight out of these new data sources. On the automation side, I mean, that's nothing new, right? So we've been increasingly automating everything that we're doing in market research for many years now. But I think we're reaching a tipping point on that as well, where we more and more have fully automated research applications that take you end to end, including analytics and even intelligent interpretation and analysis automated into solutions. Doesn't take you as far as a human being intervening and layering on insights, but we can now get a fully automated solution that's launched. The survey, the script is automatically created, the sample is automatically accessed, the data's analysed and some intelligent interpretation put on top of that within hours rather than days or weeks. And I think that is going to become bigger and bigger. And the final point about tailoring and targeting surveys, I think we've heard a lot about over the last couple of days, and I think it's critical. So this is about leveraging mobile technology, a little bit like the guys from TNS were talking about earlier today, and has been talked about a lot, to deliver the right survey at the right time to the right person. I think the targeting thing as well ties in a little bit with the big data thing, and this was touched on yesterday as programmatic buying becomes more and more, people are really taking advantage of the power that programmatic buying can offer. And we're really seeing media agencies delivering an ad to a person that's particularly relevant or particularly tailored to them because of who they are and what we know about them because of their internet surfing behaviour, or because of where they are in the buying cycle, for example. The more that's happening on the media buying side, the more that research has to mirror that. So we're going to have to increasingly be integrating things like programmatic buying systems into how we deliver surveys so that we're delivering the right survey to the right people. So that's the targeting point. I'm conscious I've been talking quite a lot, but the tailoring point, which also has been touched on a lot, is about making sure that it's the right device that we're delivering the survey in, but also the right format. So voice to text and text to voice that was talked about yesterday, leveraging technologies like that to ensure that people are getting the best survey experience for them. So those are the big things that I see.
Thanks, and you do buy the first beer. So I'm going to confess up front to cheating just a little bit. Last night I Googled emerging trends in the market research industry, just to see what the assembled wisdom of the market research press had to say. And I found out that we like 6- and 7-syllable words a lot, that big data and business intelligence were going to lead to the disintermediation of market research in the market research department. That market research itself there was going to be a commoditization, that's the 6-syllable word, and that DIY was sweeping the country, and God knows it needs sweeping. And that all of these things were sort of eliminating the need for the traditional market research department. Not everyone said that, but a lot of people said that. So I kept reading and I dug a little deeper and I started seeing things that I actually agreed with, that were more like the datafication of the individual and the datafication of the research process. The transition from surveys and from projects to a search for insights. And so that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about some of the things that I see happening that I think kind of leverage that datafication idea and that lead to those sorts of insights being the primary goal that we ought to have. The first is around observation over time, so longitudinal observation. You know, it's nothing new in the industry to, you know, to watch what people do, to understand behavior, but the technology has now given us the wherewithal to follow someone very closely at an incredibly detailed level and sort of understand their digital footprint, understand the path they take through the world, and begin to think about when and where and how. You know, to serve up questions to those people, to give them tasks that you might like them to do. And that's the second point I wanted to make, was around triggered research. I think more and more, you can call it contextual, you can call it triggered, but we see someone taking an action. You know, they go to a website, they watch a YouTube video, they buy a particular product. The product has a sensor on it, they lift the product, and the accelerometer tells us that they're turning it around, right? And we can then take some action based upon, you know, a really close, detailed understanding of what they're doing. And the last point, and the one that I think really gets to the point of this conference, is that mobile's right in the middle of all this, right? Because it's that focused application of mobile at exactly the right time, at the time when the person is the most mentally prepared to answer the question, the most physically located in the right place to be aware of the thing you want them to respond to. So it's all these things that are happening at what I'll call kind of the corner of, you know, active street and passive street. That's where I see a lot of trends in the industry going, the ability to trigger, the ability to move from one observation to another and to take actions based upon this.
Thanks. Yeah, actually, all very, very good points. I'd just like to add a few. Maybe just to emphasize, I think and now I'm allowed to say it, big data thing is really a big thing. Looking forward to the beer. I think that's something the industry needs to leverage, is starting to leverage, but we are far from leveraging all the power that sits in that. And one part of big data is probably using the opportunities that come with passive measurement. So we have learned also today and yesterday about people being a bit more reluctant and bored of long surveys. And we don't need surveys for everything. We still need surveys to find out about motivations, attitudes, things like that. But when it's about behavior, passive measurement can save us surveys and is much more accurate than surveys, actually. So with the complete explosion of touch points that a brand has towards consumers, especially due to digital web, mobile capabilities, it's actually impossible for consumers to remember which touch points they have visited. You might remember what you have watched on TV yesterday, but do you remember every Google search? Do you remember what you have seen on Facebook? Probably not. So passive measurement becomes massively important, and the technological capabilities for that are there. I think we are still at the beginning of really learning what we can do with it. We can already do a lot with it, but that will emerge. I think, and another point of big data or some sort of passive measurement is leveraging input or information that we can get in the social media space. So analyze what people are talking about on the web, getting really raw and unfiltered and non-biased opinions of people that they share with their peers and not with an interviewer where they need to be polite or where they are triggered. I'm not saying that social media will replace traditional market research because it's a different target group, but it can really enrich what we can get over that. And yeah, one point, and it's no surprise, I mean, that's the topic of this whole conference here. mobile is, of course, super important. As a survey tool, yeah, but also to understand it more as a touch point. So when it comes to ad effectiveness, for example, I just read that eMarketer forecast 2016 to be a year where mobile ad spendings will be half of all the digital ad spendings. So that's really big. So we need to get our heads around how do we measure mobile ad exposure and integrate that into campaign tracking models and then things like that. Yeah, actually.
Okay, so some interesting themes. So based on that, I mean, given the highly unstructured nature of the data sources available and the sheer quantity of data, can we really hope to create automated systems to make sense of it quickly and cheaply, in your opinion? So we'll start with you, Josh.
Well, I started last time, shall I?
Okay, Stuart, yeah.
Sure.
So, you know, what big data focuses on, from my point of view, is, you know, kind of the known unknowns out there, right? There's a lot in there. We don't always know what we're looking for. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for disturbances in the force, right? You know, we're looking for something that's unusual, something that is a pattern that we can recognize. But honestly, I don't think that poking around in 100 exabytes of data, hoping to find that needle in the haystack, is really a very fruitful activity. It really won't get us there. So, you know, I just kind of wrote down 5 or 6 steps that I think are really important to bear in mind when we're getting involved in some sort of a big data or data mining exercise. And the first is about knowing what questions you're trying to answer and not just assuming that that mining through the data will somehow surface the information and surface the insights magically. There's no magic. There's an intelligent search for specific information. I think taking the time to understand the data that you have access to, where it needs to be aligned, what the sources of that data are, whether or not it exhibits a bias in one direction or another, and statistically accounting for those biases before you begin playing around with the data sets. Accounting for those irregularities. Look, at that point, you can begin to look for causality. You can begin to look for something that allows you to predict what might happen based upon what has happened once you understand those causal links. Maybe the single most important thing is more and more of this data has some element of personally identifiable information to it, and we as an industry need to be painfully aware of privacy. I wasn't here yesterday for this discussion, but I'll just add my voice to it. There's a lot of information out there. When we start passively tracking people and the machines around them and the activities they get involved in, it's really important that we're attentive to our clients and our respondents' privacy. And then finally, all of those things lined up, now you're in position to answer the clearly defined questions that you had in the first place. So it's really about that analytical plan and moving forward based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge amount to add to that other than to really emphasize that point about clearly defining the questions up front and focusing on the data sources and the data points within the huge pool that we've got to choose from that have a chance of being able to answer those questions. We've just got so much to learn. We need to chunk it down. We need to focus. So it's, what are we trying to understand? Are we trying to understand the effectiveness of your advertising creative? Okay, which data sources might tell you something about that? The response on social media, the uplift in search data. Focus on those. There may be many, many others that can tell you something, but let's focus on those and see what we can learn. Then you have a chance of beginning to generate some insight and generalize that will often give you insight into your advertising and build solutions that can be routinely replicated.
Yeah, and just maybe to add one thing, I think one of the most promising career paths in market research for the future is data scientists. So people that are not only marketing scientists and can deal with statistics, also that's needed, but also deal with these all extra bytes of data and make sense out of it and just not only make sense out of it, but pull it into automated systems. Not everything will be able to be automated, but many will, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to develop on that. If I would be at university now, I think that would be the career path I would follow to make something out of it. Just an example, when it comes to automated text analysis, that's we already have some good stuff there, but it has a quality of identifying moods and sentiments of something between 60 and 80%, which is not too bad, which is really, I wouldn't have thought that would be possible 10 years ago, but it still means that 40 to 20% of everything which is coded is wrong. So, but we will get there, and that's really something where I'm really confident that will change the industry.
So on that note, I mean, Torsten, is there any new players that the market research industry needs to be aware of and should pair up with? And would that be seen as a threat or as an opportunity?
So I think there are a lot of companies out there that are sometimes seen as a threat. I would, of course, like to see them as an opportunity. I think there are various companies out there that collect various amounts of data that have tracking data available that market research can leverage. So just look at Facebook, for example. They collect so much data that many people think, where does Facebook need market research for? Well, they still need us because they don't know too much about competition. They don't know too much about different media. So partnering with them will add value to them and, of course, add value to us. If we leverage Facebook profiles, if we leverage data that we can get from Facebook about who has seen an ad maybe in our panels, and then ask our panels about brand perception, things like that, that will help us a lot, and that can also help Facebook a lot. So partnerships like that is what we are closing at the moment, and that's one of the big examples. There are various, I think, especially partnering with ad networks, ad agencies, the whole real-time bidding, programmatic buying area. They have a lot of data about consumers, but they don't have all the data. So market research, I think, will always be some sort of reference layer, which can combine all sorts of sources of data from these big parties. And if we fail to do that, we will have no future. But if we do that in an intelligent way, there's a very bright future for us, I think.
Yeah, again, wholeheartedly agree. I think it's absolutely both a threat and an opportunity. I think it's a necessity that we build these partnerships, and the ones that you called out, I think, are critical. So it's those who own the data, it's those who are planning the media and also have access to huge pools of data. It's also the tech companies as well, and a lot of those are startups, a lot of them are here. And without the technology platforms to allow us to do that, I think the market research industry will struggle. But again, market research is still a critical part of it. Research as we understand it now, which is about drawing out the insight from all this data, leveraging the technology to get to that insight. Ideally, quicker, faster, better.
Yeah, I'm going to provide the second echo to Torsten. Data partnerships, absolutely. None of us have the full picture. The classic example is you have customer loyalty data for a retailer, but you don't have anything about what they buy outside that store, right? You're answering questions in a vacuum, right? So I think, the more data we can get, the more data that answers a question we've never been able to answer, and those sorts of partnerships back and forth, I think, can be enormously valuable. We work for three big, well-established research companies. We're not technology developers. We need to be sort of laboratories for new technologies to be launched, right? We need to partner with companies that have new and interesting approaches that need to be tested out, they need to be popularized, and we're all excited about doing that. We're looking for that next big thing. And then the last thing I would add is industry partnerships, where companies like ours ought to be working together, because a lot is changing. The data is changing, the technology that we use to understand and deliver that data is changing, and there's a research discipline and a research on research process that I think as responsible participants in the market research industry, we really need to go through, because otherwise, we're chasing rainbows, we're looking at shiny objects, right? We need to make sure that we put new tools and new data sources through their paces, understand what can and can't be done with them, understand what is the right way and the wrong way to use them. And I think those sorts of industry forums and collaborative efforts are absolutely something that we need to do more of.
Fantastic, fantastic insight. I think if we throw it to the floor, if there's any questions from the audience, now's your opportunity. Any questions at all?
So my question is about a topic you were just talking about, the idea of know your questions first. I'm interested to know, I think, I absolutely agree with you on that, but I also think there's a value in like grounded theory, being able to, find your hypotheses based on the data. And I was wondering, where do you guys stand on that, and where do you think the future of marketing research is with grounded theory?
Yeah, at the risk of buying a beer, the big data process really is about kind of two levels of understanding, right? One is I have a specific question and I know the answer is in there somewhere, right? I have aligned a variety of different types of data that give me different perspectives, different angles that I might solve that problem from. It's the sort of serendipity that happens when you're doing that that's the really fun part. Right, and that's, I think, what you're talking about. There are sort of chance encounters with insights that you weren't expecting that may lead you down a whole different path. So there definitely is magic, in a huge volume of data that's been well prepared and well thought out. But it definitely starts with kind of a clear path to try and answer some specific question, and then you begin to branch off and find out that there's a lot more that you can do with that.
Is there any other questions? Yeah, this table over there.
Thank you. Coming back to the partnerships you were talking about, and specifically on mobile, have you ever considered doing a partnership with a telco provider? I think GfK has something with Vodafone right now going on, but have you tried? Do you have any lessons from that? Obviously to access their data and the customer profiles, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so it is something that we've explored. I think we've all talked about PII and the difficulties of extracting data from a telco provider that we can then add value to needs to be disaggregated to a degree, and that's been a challenge for us certainly in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the GfK partnership directly, so we have these partnerships with various providers in some countries. So it's in general a good idea, but it also comes with some challenges regarding PII and what aggregated or disaggregated data we can get. So usually it's about getting really big data from these companies and having a small sample where we get more data on, so that we can use with scientific methods like data fusion to get more insights out of this data.
There's a question here as well at the back. Yeah.
What are your investment criteria? And if you're prepared to say, how much do you anticipate your company investing over the next 12 months?
Okay, I won't answer the last question. That would be too confidential. But criteria are actually, what can company we can invest to deliver in terms of new technology, which will enable us to get new insights, to be more agile, to be able to automate things more, and really to deliver additional insights that the market needs. That's very high level, I realize, but that's actually how it is.
Sustainable competitive advantage, right? I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for partners that bring something that, when we combine it with what we do, give us something unique in the industry and something that we believe has more than, a 6-month or 12-month half-life to it, right? We're looking for a sustainable advantage in the marketplace. We're looking for emerging technologies. We're also looking for companies to partner with who are good at something that's been done for quite some time and maybe do it in a somewhat different way.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I guess the only other criteria is considering that sustainable competitive advantage that particularly fits with, in our case, the Millward Brown vision and what makes us special in the marketplace, or what we believe makes us special in the marketplace.
Is there any other questions before we close off? No? Oh.
How far do you see implicit measurement or measuring system 1 being a big part of the future of market research?
I see it as a huge part. I mean, it's a fundamental part of our ad testing now, and I only see that growing. I mean, I was listening to the session earlier this morning, and I wholeheartedly agree that the techniques that were put forward there are important techniques. I think they're quite embedded, actually, in what we do. And I think that will only grow, but I think that we've always found that it needs to be combined with traditional survey research to make sure that we're fully understanding the insight that comes out of it. And that's, to me, that's where we are now already.
Yeah, I mean, pretesting's not going away, but whether it's implicit or facial coding or eye tracking or anything you would generally lump under neuro, it's becoming just part of the fabric of the analysis at this point. You know, you can't really be in the business without having an offer in these areas, without having expertise in these areas. You know, there aren't a lot of people who have that depth of understanding, that we saw earlier today, who can talk you through this in a very, very disaggregate way. And they're really valuable, and we're all looking for them. So it's going to be a huge part of the, especially of the pretesting business going forward.
Sure. I have nothing to add to that.
Any other questions? No? Fantastic. So I'm just going to close off with one question that I have for the panel members. So you get a phone call from your bank manager who's told you that your rich auntie has deposited £250 million or dollars, and but there's a clause. You have to invest in one company. What company would you invest in? We'll start with Josh.
Wow. Millward Brown.
Good answer.
No, I mean, I'm going to have to dodge the question, because I just think the nature of the partnerships that we're trying to create is that one single bet would be the wrong thing to do. I think it is about exploring the different data owners, data providers, data scrapers, and technology companies, and investing that $250 million equally across lots of them, and then Auntie would make a lot of money back, I think.
Yeah, I won't make an offer now here on stage to anybody. But I think, yeah, same as Josh. It would probably be not one single companies, but various companies who can deliver things that we don't have yet that would enable us to open up new markets. Many technology-based companies, probably.
I'm going to become a serious minority shareholder in the Boston Red Sox.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.